Jaya Girivardhari, Jaya Yashodananda, Jaya Rajajana Ranjana, Jaya Yashodananda, Jaya Rajajana Ranjana, Jaya Yashodanandana, Jaya Rajajana Ranjana, Jaya Yashodanandana, Jaya Rajajana Ranjana, Jaya Yamuna Kiravana Chari, Jaya Kunja Vihari, 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 Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. हरिनाम संकीर्तन की जय, श्री श्री राधा माधव की जय, जगन्नाथ बलदेव सुंदरमाई की जय, श्री प्रभुपाद की जय, श्री गुरुदेव की जय, टागोर प्रेमानंद हरि बोल। ओम नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय, ओम नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय, ओम नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय, नारायणं नमस्कृत्य नरं चैव नरोत्तमं, देवीं सरस्वतीं व्यासं ततो जयमुदीरयेत्. Before reciting the Srimad Bhagavatam, which is a very means of conquest, one should offer respectful obeisances unto the personality of God Narayana, unto Narayana Rishi, the supermost human being, unto Mother Saraswati, the goddess of learning, and unto Srila Vyasadeva, the author. Nashta prayesha vadreshu nityam bhagavata sevaya bhagavati uttama shloke bhaktir bhavati neshtaki. By regular attendance in classes of the Bhagavatam and by rendering of service to the pure devotees, all that is troublesome to the heart is almost completely destroyed, and loving service unto the personality of Godhead, who is praised with transcendental songs, is established as an irrevocable fact. Hare Krishna, Prabhu's Padre, welcome all of you. Thank you for joining and keeping up the appointment with Krishna. So today, we'll be discussing from Srimad Bhagavatam, 3rd canto, 14th chapter, 2 verses 14 and 15. So let us recite verse number 3, 14, 14. Saviditvat majanamno Bhavam Santana Bhavanah Trayodashadat Tasam Yaste Shilam Anuvritaha Saviditvat Majanamno Bhavam Santana Bhavanah Trayodashadat Tasam Yaste Shilam Anuvritaha Saviditvat Majanamno Bhavam Santana Bhavanah Trayodashadat Tasam Yaste Shilam Anuvritaha. Would you like to recite?
Hare Krishna, may?
Hare Krishna. Yes, please.
Saviditvatma janam no bhavam sannana bhavanaham trayodasada dattasam yaste shilam anuvrtaham.
Thank you, Prabhu. Hare Krishna. We go to the word meaning synonyms. Sah, Daksha, Viditva, understanding. Atmajanam, of the daughters. Na, or Bhavam, indication. Santana, children. Bhavanaha, well-wisher. Trayodasha, 13. Adadat, handed over. Tasam, of all of them. Yaha, those who are. Te, your. Sheelam, behavior. Anumrtaha, all faithful. Translation and purport by Divine Grace Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Translation, please hear. Our well-wishing father, Daksha, after knowing our intentions, handed over 13 of his daughters unto you. And since then, we have all been faithful. Purport. Generally, the daughters were too shy to express their opinions before their father. But the father would accept the daughter's intentions through someone else, such as a grandmother to whom the grandchildren had free access. King Daksha collected the opinions of his daughters and thus handed over 13 to Kashyapa. Every one of Diti's sisters was a mother of children. Therefore, since she was equally faithful to the same husband, why should she remain without children? We'll go to the next verse, 15th verse. Atha me kuru kalyanam kamam kamalalochana artopasarpanam vibhuman amogham hi mahiyasi atha me kuru kalyanam kamam kamalalochana artopasarpanam bhuman amogham hi mahiyasi atha me kuru kalyanam kamam kamalalochana artopasarpanam bhuman amogham hi mahiyasi. Any Mataji or anybody else also can recite. Yes, go ahead, Balaji.
Thank you. Ata me guru kalyanam kamam kamala lochana artopasarpanam bhuman amogham hi mahiyasi.
Thank you. Now we read the synonyms and translation. Atha, therefore, may unto me, Kuru, kindly do, Kalyanam, benediction, Kamam, desire, Kamala Lochana, O lotus-eyed one, Artha, of the distressed, Upasarpanam, the approaching, Bhuman, O great one, Amogham, without failure, he, certainly, Mahiyasi, to a great person. Translation by joined Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Translation, O lotus-eyed one, kindly bless me by fulfilling my desire. When someone in distress approaches a great person, his pleas should never go in vain. Diti knew very well that her request might be rejected because of the untimely situation. But she pleaded that when there is an emergency or a distressful condition, there is no consideration of time or situation. Jai Prabhupada ki jai. Om Jnanandasya Jnananjalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Mahyam Dadati Subhadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yutapadakalam Shri Gurum Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagarajatam Sahagana Raghunatamitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Pada Sahagana Lita Shri Vishaka Vitamscha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sude Devi Pranamami Haripriye Vancha Kalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhu Vayevacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Vasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Yanta Pravishya Mamvacham Maprasuptam Sanjeevayat Kilashakti Dharasvadam Kanyapti Hasta Charana Shravanato Gadhin Prana Namo Bhagavate Purushaya Tubhyam Namo Vishnu 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 Namo Vishnu. So Hare Krishna Prabhu Mataji, welcome all of you and thank you very much for joining for hearing Krishna Katha from Srimad Bhagavatam, 3rd Canto, 14th chapter. The two verses we will discuss is 14 and 15. So this chapter is entitled Pregnancy of Diti in the Evening. See, in the 4th verse of this chapter, Prabhupada writes in the purport, one who is actually faithful and inquisitive is qualified to hear the transcendental pastimes of the appearance and disappearance of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So very nice, no? Who is actually faithful and inquisitive, only he is qualified to hear the transcendental. So Vidura was a suitable candidate to receive such transcendental messages. So the great sage Maitreya, he addressed Vidura as a warrior, not only because Vidura belonged to the Kuru family, but because he was anxious to hear about the activities, wonderful activities of the Lord in his incarnation as Varaha or Nrsimha. So many incarnations, right? So because, and basically Varaha and Nrsimha, because of Hiranyaksha and Hiranyakashipu. Now, because the inquiries concerned the Lord, they were perfectly befitting a devotee. A devotee has no taste for hearing anything mundane. There are many topics of mundane warfare, but a devotee is not inclined to hear them. The topics of the warfare in which the Lord engages do not concern the war of death, but the war against the chain of Maya, which obliges one to accept repeated birth and death. One who takes delight in hearing the war topics of the Lord. Prabhupada says, one who takes delight in hearing the war topics of the Lord is relieved from the chains of birth and death. He further says, foolish people are suspicious of Krishna's taking part in the battle of Kurukshetra, not knowing that his taking part ensured liberation for all who are present on the battlefield. And it is said by Bhishma Deva that all who are present on the battlefield of Kurukshetra, they attained their original spiritual existence after death. So hearing the war topics of the Lord as is, Prabhupada says in the purport that hearing the war topics of the Lord is as good as any other devotional service. What a wonderful statement. So hearing Krishna Katha is very, very wonderful. And he also made a point of Dhruva Maharaj in the 6th verse of the purport, 346. He says, while quitting his body, Maharaj Dhruva, the son of King Uttanapada, was attended by personalities like Sunanda and others, who received him in the kingdom of God. Dhruva left this world at an early age, as a young boy. Although he had attained the throne of his father, and had several children of his own. Now, because he was due to quit the world, death was waiting for him. He did not care for death. However, he even, with his present body, he boarded a spiritual airplane and went directly to the planet of Vishnu because of his association with the great sage Narada, who had spoken to him in the narration of the pastimes of the Lord. See, in the purport of 11th verse in this chapter, Prabhupada says, in Bhagavad Gita, sex for begetting children is accepted as righteous. A person sexually inclined for simple sense gratification is unrighteous. Prabhupada says, in Diti's appeal to her husband for sex, it was not exactly that she was afflicted by sex desires, but she desired sons. Since she had no sons, she felt poorer than her co-wives. Therefore, Kashyapa Muni was supposed to satisfy his bona fide wife. See, in the 12th translation, Prabhupada says, a woman is honored in the world by the benediction of her husband. And a husband is like you. And a husband, like you, will become famous by having children because you are meant for the expansion of living entities. And he says in the purport, according to Rishabhadeva, one should not become a father or mother unless one is confident that he can beget children whom he can deliver from the clutches of birth and death. Human life is the only opportunity to get out of the material scene, which is full of miseries of birth, death, old age, and diseases. Every human being should be given the opportunity to take advantage of his human form of life. And a father like Kashyapa is supposed to beget good children for the purpose of liberation. And in the 13th verse, Prabhupada says, it appears from this verse that free selection of a husband was allowed by the father. Free selection of husband, but not by free association. Very important point to understand, right? Free selection of husband was allowed by the father, but not by free association. The daughters were asked separately to submit their selection of a husband who was famous for his acts and personality. The ultimate selection depended on the choice of the father. Ultimate selection depended on the choice of the father. We will discuss more in this subject. So in the 6th canto, chapter 6, that is the progeny of the daughters of Daksha. In the summary, Prabhupada says, Prajapati Daksha, he begot 60 daughters in the womb of his wife, Asikni. These daughters were given in charity to various persons to increase the population. Now, since these offspring of Daksha were women, Narada Muni did not try to lead them towards renounced order of life. So the daughters were saved from Narada Muni. See, 10 of the daughters were given in marriage to Dharmaraja, 13 to Kashyapa Muni, and 27 to the moon god Chandra. In this way, 50 daughters were distributed. And of the other 10 daughters, 4 were given to Kashyapa and 2 each to Bhuta, Angira, and Krishasva. One should know that it's because of the union of these 60 daughters with various exalted personalities that the entire universe was filled with various kinds of living entities such as human beings, demigods, demons, what it is, right? So thus Kashyapa Muni received 17 daughters in all. In the first verse of this canto, 6th chapter, first verse, in the translation, Shukadeva Goswami said, my dear king, thereafter, at the request of Lord Brahma, Prajapati Daksha, who is known as Prachetasa, begot 60 daughters in the womb of his wife, Ashikni. All the daughters were very affectionate towards their father. In the purport further, Prabhupada says, after the incidents concerning, see, this is why he are only female. See, incidents concerning loss of many sons. Initially, Daksha procreated sons, 10,000 sons, right? Plus 1,000. So, what happened? Narada Muni intercepted. No, what are you doing? So, they were all taken to Brahmacharya. So, to his instructions. So, after these incidents concerning the loss of these many sons, Daksha repented his misunderstanding with Narada Muni. Now, Lord Brahma then saw Daksha and instructed him to beget children again. So this time, Daksha was very cautious to beget female children instead of male children, so that Narada Muni would not disturb them, urging them to accept the renounced order of life. That's what he did with all the sons. Prabhupada very nicely, very important points he has specified in this purport. See, females are not meant for the renounced order of life. They should be faithful to their good husbands. For if a husband is competent for liberation, his wife will also achieve liberation with him. As stated in the Shastra, the results of a husband's pious activities are shared by his wife. Very important points which Prabhupada is mentioning in this purport. 661, 6th canto, 6th chapter, 1st purport, where he says, females are not meant for the order of life. They should be faithful to their husbands. For if a husband is competent for liberation, his wife will also achieve liberation with him. And he says in the Shastra, the results of a husband's pious activities are shared with his wife's wife. Therefore, a woman's duty is to be very chaste and faithful to her husband. Then, without separate endeavor, she will share in all the profit the husband earns. And in the 9th canto, 3rd chapter, 20th verse, purport, Prabhupada says, according to Vedic culture, a woman must accept the husband given to her by her parents and remain chaste and faithful to him. In the Prabhupada Leelamrita, volume 2, the 46th chapter, entitled Preaching to America, part 1. Srila Prabhupada offered his own positive proposal for women in Krishna consciousness. Because he was in the US, no? He was talking to his disciples there. He was telling, Prabhupada was telling them, our policy should be that at Dallas Gurukula, we shall create first-class men. And we shall teach the girls two things. One, how to become chaste and faithful to their husband. And two, how to cook nicely. Prabhupada, I'm not telling you, Prabhupada is telling you, if they have these two qualifications, then I will take a guarantee to get them a good husband. So try to do that. Prabhupada is telling, educate the girls how to become faithful, chaste wife, how to cook nicely. Let them learn varieties of cooking. Is it very difficult? See, these two qualifications. There are many stories, like Damayanti, Parvati, Sita, great women in the history. Our girls should read their lives. And by 15 or 16 years, they should be married. If they are qualified, it will not be difficult to find a nice husband. If a woman is chaste, even though she is not very beautiful, she will be liked by her husband. So train them in that way. So you are talking about Kashyapa Muni, right? Kashyapa is one of the Prajapatis, the son of Marichi, and one of the son-in-law of Prajapati Daksha. He married 13 daughters of Prajapati Daksha, and the names are Aditi, Diti, Dhanu, Kashta, Arishta, Surasa, Ila, Muni, Krodavasha, Tamra, Surabhi, Sarama, and Timi. So he begot many children by these wives. See, in the 4th canto, 27th chapter, 7th verse, Prabhupada says, children begotten under the rules and regulations of the scriptures generally become as good as the father and mother. Children begotten under the rules and regulations of the scriptures generally become as good as the father and mother. But children born illegitimately mainly become Varna Shankara. The Varna Shankara population is irresponsible to the family, community, and even to themselves. See, formerly, the Varna Shankara population was checked with the observation of reformatory method called Garbhadana Sanskara, a child begetting religious semen. So this is very, very important for all of us to understand. Actually, in this verse, it is found that King Puranjana had begotten so many children, and they were not Varna Shankara. All of them were good, well-behaved children, and they had two qualities like their father and mother. Srimad Bhagavatam equals behavior. in every pastime of the Lord and his wonderful devotees in Srimad Bhagavatam gives us certain lessons to learn as devotees and correct in our life. And this will really make us spiritually progress towards the Lord. So this 14th chapter, third canto, about pregnancy of Diti in the evening is very interesting chapter, which talks about the pastimes which happens before the appearance of Lord Varaha. Kashyapa Muni, great sage, created by Brahma. He was married to Diti, daughter of Prajapati Daksha. Why? To start the creation of this gigantic material world. Now, Daksha has been interested to create human beings, and that is the reason that he is called Prajapati, which means master of all human beings, Praja. So, along with Diti, his 13 sisters were married to Kashyapa Muni to start the procreation. So, all the 13 sisters of Diti got the children and they were very happy. But Diti did not have any children. Therefore, naturally, out of concern towards the sisters and also envious sometimes, she started approaching her husband, Kashyapa Muni, to give children, as she was tormented by Cupid and wished to immediately unite with Kashyapa Muni. The only issue was that the approaching time was inappropriate, as it was Sandhya time. Therefore, it is prohibited as per Shastra to unite, produce children at that time. But Diti was afflicted with too much of sex desire, no? And she started approaching Kashyapa Muni. So she started conveying her opinion about her feelings, and she was nagging her husband very strongly to get the child immediately. So Srila Prabhupada, he says, when a man or woman is afflicted by the lust of sex desire, it is to be understood as sinful contamination. Kashyapa was engaged in his spiritual activities, but he did not have sufficient strength to refuse his wife, who was thus afflicted. He could have refused her with strong words expressing impossibility at that time, but he was not as spiritually strong as Vidura. So it appears that Kashyapa was already inclined to have the sexual enjoyment with his wife. And because he was not a strong man, he tried to dissuade her only with pacifying words. Very important point for us to understand is now, we have to be very clear on one thing, that as struggling devotees, we should not consider that these depictions of Diti Mata and Kashyapa Muni as ordinary people. Each one has been ordered by the Lord to enact this pastime of Lord Varaha. And therefore, they are taking these roles and acting accordingly. See, they are very exalted devotees of the Lord. And this pastime is basically to exhibit our condition of behavior, rather than these exalted personalities. We have no right to condemn them whatsoever. Kashyapa Muni was the father of Lord Vamana, Krishna himself. Then what reason he can behave like this? This is just to teach us conditioned souls behavior and how to rectify it. That is all. They are all acting on behalf of the Lord. See, in Bhagavad Gita, 3rd chapter, verse number 36, when Arjuna inquires the Lord, O descendant of Vrishni, by what is one impelled to sinful acts, even unwillingly, as if engaged by force? Lord Krishna replies, it is lust only, Arjuna, which is born of constant touch with material modes of passion and later transformed into wrath, and which is all the devouring sinful enemy of this world. So, lust leads to anger. And when we are blinded by anger, we end up doing harm to others and our own selves. See, my Guru Maharaj used to say, if you act as selfish, then you don't care for other living entities. Your mind is engrossed in yourself, your expansion, and your name and fame, and not on Krishna at all. You think too much about yourself. That is selfishness. The secret to get out of all these is you should keep Krishna at the center of all activities. So instead of being self-centric, we should pray for the mercy of Krishna, Prabhupada, and our Guru to make our life Krishna-centric. So when we stop keeping ourselves in the center and lead a Krishna-centric life, then we will be able to overcome our Kripana mentalities, miserly mentalities. So the effect of lust, you can see, one is Kripana mentality. Then we have, in Bhagavad Gita, 2nd chapter, 62 and 63, 2 verses, Krishna very nicely explains how lust develops and what are the ill effects caused by it. He says, Krishna says, while contemplating the objects of the senses, a person develops attachment for them. And from such attachment, lust develops. And from lust, anger arises. From anger, complete delusion arises. And from delusion, bewilderment of memory. When memory is bewildered, intelligence is lost. And when intelligence is lost, one falls down again into the material pool. So, lust leads to anger, delusion, bewilderment of memory, and intelligence is lost. So, in that state, we forget ourselves as servants of the Lord. And we tend to think ourselves as master. The result of such Kripana thinking would lead the intelligence to find out arguments in favor of our mentality. The result of such mentality is that we justify all our actions and behavior with a logical reasoning, understanding. So such behavior will lead to we become too much talkative, trying to hide. So Duryodhana is another perfect example of this mentality. And you can know the result was catastrophic for the entire Kuru dynasty. So similarly, the result of Diti Mata's behavior resulted in 2 demons, Hiranyaksha and Hiranyakashipu. But once she heard from Kashyapa Muni that she will have 2 demons in her womb, she sincerely repented for her behavior. And action in the later verses we can see. So, but as we as conditioned souls, we continue with this same mentality and we justify our actions with so much logic in devotional service. So this is the reason for our downfall or bhakti. And we cannot blame anyone for our fall down. The biggest challenge in devotional service is that we will not even realize that we have fallen away from our devotional service because our mind will cover our constitutional position of the soul, Atma Mosha. So Diti, when afflicted by lust, insisted her husband Kashyapa Muni to unite with her, though it was inauspicious time for union. So she was insistent, persistent to have the union, at the Sandhya time. But Kashyapa Muni gave some shastric statements to her so that she can be convinced to postpone the union. But she was adamant and Kashyapa Muni yielded to her request. So Prabhupada writes, it appears that Kashyapa was already inclined to have this sexual enjoyment with his wife. And because he was not a strong man, he tried to dissuade her only with pacifying words. The moment we deviate an inch from this determination of controlling our senses, including the mind, we immediately fall prey to the onslaughts of material affection. And we are just consumed. And by the time we realize it, it becomes too late for recovery. See, the material mind and material senses are so powerful. It drags us to the rut always. And any sense object can kindle our mind and senses immediately. And the constitutional position of the soul is covered. Our sadhana is affected. And we immediately blame other living entities. And we have some favorable excuse in not following our spiritual commitments, including chanting 16 rounds also sometimes. So as initial disciples, we cannot afford to miss. But we tend to do it because we think spiritual life is not so important. And it is not our top priority. We always feel that material condition has to be improved first, and then we can do our sadhana. This tendency prevails because spirituality takes a back seat in our life. We are more engrossed in current material conditions that we forget the fact that there will never be a situation where our material condition will be 100% perfect. It is impossible in this material world. That's why Prabhupada writes in a wonderful purport in Bhagavatam 4th canto, 29th chapter, 32nd verse. It's a golden statement for our eternity. Please listen carefully. One should simply try to develop his Krishna consciousness and not waste his time trying to improve his material condition. Actually, the material condition cannot be improved. The process of improvement means accepting another miserable condition. However, if we endeavor to improve our Krishna consciousness, the distresses of material life will disappear without extraneous endeavor. The key point is that we should simply endeavor to improve our Krishna consciousness, and everything will fall in place. But we do the opposite. We think that let everything fall in place, and then we can improve our Krishna consciousness. This is not correct. Let us remember the golden words of Lord Vamana in this connection. That is the key to our spiritual upliftment. That is in the 8th canto, 19th chapter, 25th verse. It says, Lord Vamana is telling, material existence causes discontent in regard to fulfilling one's lusty desires and achieving more and more money. This is the cause for the continuation of material life, which is full of repeated birth and death. But one who is satisfied by that which is obtained by destiny is fit for liberation from this material existence. We should be satisfied in any condition of life. Santushta ena kena va. This is the key to control our lust. So we require the mercy of the Guru and Acharyas to implement this in our life. To become liberated means to become free from Dehatma Buddhi, the illusory attachment for personal bodily coverings, and everything connected with the body, namely wife, children, and all other entanglements. One selects a wife for bodily comforts, and the result is children. For wife and children, one requires a dwelling place, and thus such a residential house is also necessary. See, the animals like horses, elephants, cows, dogs, etc., they're all household animals. And the householder has to keep them as household paraphernalia. But in the modern civilization, horses and elephants have been replaced by cars and conveyances with considerable horsepower. This is what Prabhupada says in the purport. In 242. To maintain all the household affairs, one has to increase the bank balance and be careful about the treasury house. And in order to display the opulence of material assets, one has to keep good relations with friends and relatives. And also we have to be careful about maintaining the status quo. This is called material civilization of material attachment. Very nice statement Prabhupada makes. No? This is called material civilization of material attachment. Prabhupada says devotion for Lord Krishna means negation of all material attachments as listed in this way. By the grace of Lord Krishna, Maharaj Parikshit was awarded all material amenities and an undisputed kingdom to enjoy the undisputed position of a king. He was a great king by the grace of the Lord. And was able to give up all the connection with material attachment. This is the position of a pure devotee. Maharaj Parikshit, due to his natural affection for Lord Krishna as a devotee of the Lord, was always executing his royal duties on behalf of the Lord. And as a responsible king of the world, he was always careful to see that the influence of Kali would never enter his kingdom. The devotee of the Lord never thinks of his household paraphernalia as his own, but surrenders everything for the service of the Lord. So living entities under a devotee's care get the opportunity for God realization with the management of a devotee master. Prabhupada says attachment for household paraphernalia and for Lord Krishna, they cannot go together. They are very poorly getting together. One attachment is the path of darkness, and the other attachment is the path of light. Where there is light, there is no darkness. And where there is darkness, there is no light. But an expert devotee can turn everything to the path of light by service attitude of the Lord. And the best example here is the Pandavas. Maharaj Yudhishthira and householders like him can turn everything into light. How? By dovetailing so-called material assets in the service of the Lord. But one who is not trained up or is unable to turn everything to the service of the Lord must give up all material connections before he can get fit to hear and chant the glories of the Lord. One who has seriously heard Srimad Bhagavatam, even for one day, like Maharaj Parikshit, from a fit personality like Shukadev Goswami, may be able to lose all affinity for material things. See, there is no utility simply in imitating Maharaj Parikshit and hearing Bhagavatam from professional men, even for 700 years, it will not make any effect. To take Srimad Bhagavatam as a means of maintaining family expenditure is the grossest type of namaparad, offense at the feet of the Lord. So Parikshit Maharaj could give up the attachment within a few days. Not immediately, but he was prepared. His training was there. This is our philosophy. Rupa Goswami's definition, no? Anasaktasya Vishayan. Vishayan means necessities of the body, eating, sleeping, mating, and defending. So one should understand that I am not this body. But because I am now encaged within this body, so I must maintain the body also without being attached. Prabhupada gives a wonderful example in one of his lectures. He says, just like you have got a nice car, you require it for movement. You know very well that I am not this car, but I am taking the service from the car. The car should be maintained to give me the regular service, not that I shall identify with this car. Correct? Similarly, this body is just like the car, mechanical car. Stated in Bhagavad Gita, right? 18.61. Yantra Rudani Mayaya. So Maya has given us this car for satisfying our desires, this body. Sometimes it's called a field, Kshetra. So we want to work on this. Just like agriculture work on this field and produce some result. So we are working on this field. We are moving by this car, this body. But I am not this body. I am not this field. I am not this car. If one has understood this philosophy, that I am not this body, I am not this body does not mean I shall neglect it. I must maintain it, just like the car, right? Same example. If I want to move nicely, my car must be maintained very nicely. So our business should not be to get attached by the car or the body, but to maintain it for our work. And our real business is to develop Krishna consciousness. Just like we move by the car, goes to do some business. So car is not my business. I have got different businesses. Similarly, our real business in this human form of life is to develop Krishna consciousness. How to develop Krishna consciousness? That is our real business. And to execute that real business, we take help of this car. That is his body. That's all. Maintain it nicely, cleanse it, give gasoline and mobile oil, tire tube. That is required because you have to move. We don't say that it is mithya, it is false. That is Mayavada philosophy. Brahma Satyam Jagan Mithya. This material world is false. That is Mayavadi. We don't say false because we have to take work from it. Why I shall say it false? When I take some work from the typewriter or some other machine, why shall I say it's false? It is real. So our philosophy is we don't neglect this material world as false. That is pseudo-renunciation. You cannot give up. Why should you call it false? Just like some materialists, so they criticize, you're using material things. Why do you say false? So that criticism is applicable to Mayavadi philosophy. Who say Jagan Mithya, this whole material world is false. Brahma Satyam Jagan Mithya. We don't say false. We say it is temporary. And I have to take some benefit out of it. Because I am in this material world. How can I say it false? I must eat. How can I say eating is false? That is not our philosophy. We must eat something which will help me in my real business. My real business is Krishna consciousness. Therefore, I must eat Krishna prasadam. And that will maintain my body and help my business. This is our philosophy. See, there is a very nice instructive story for us to understand. There is a prostitute. Her fee was, if anyone wants to visit that prostitute, she was charging 100,000 of diamond pieces. So there were rich men, for sense gratification she was paid. But one poor man and diseased man, he had a very faithful wife. Although he was very poor and diseased, his wife was serving him very nicely. The husband could not work because he was diseased. And the wife was working, maintaining her husband herself. Fortunately, she had no children, but the husband was always morose. Now, the wife is asking, my dear husband, I'm trying to satisfy you in so many ways, working myself and cooking for you, giving you foodstuff, and I'm getting you bathed and everything. Why are you so morose? He was hesitating to disclose his mind. When she insisted, you disclose, why are you sorry? Then I shall try to satisfy you. So he disclosed his mind. What is that? I want to visit that prostitute. Just see, he's poor man, he's deceased. See how much his lust and sense gratification is so strong. He was thinking of going to that prostitute, and he disclosed his mind to his wife. Then she went to that prostitute's house, and without her permission, she was washing her dishes, her clothes, sweeping the rooms, everything. And the prostitute asked her, who are you? You're coming, you're not charging anything, you're not asking anything. What do you want? So in this way, when she was daily asking that, what is in your mind? You tell me, you're a very nice woman. For nothing, you're working for me. I will do something for you. Then she disclosed her mind. My dear lady, I'm a very poor woman, but my husband is deceased and he has no money, but he wants to visit you. So the woman could understand. She said, yes, you can bring your husband on such and such date. So she was very glad and told her husband, I fixed up an appointed date. We'll go there. Then he was very glad. Now, when the man visited the prostitute's house, she received the man. In India, it is a system that when you receive a gentleman or lady, you must give him sumptuous food to eat. So there were very palatable dishes served to the man. Each vegetable in each preparation was put in 2 pots, one in iron pots and one in golden pots. So he was eating. Now this man asked the prostitute, well, you have given me the same preparation in 2 pots, one in gold pot and one in iron pot. Why? What is the idea? So she said, first of all, taste it. Then I shall disclose what is the idea. So he was tasting, eating. Then the prostitute asked him, how do you like? Oh, it is very nice. Then, is there any different taste in the golden pot? No, same taste. And the iron pot? Same taste. So she replied at that time, you're so rascal that you want to gratify your senses. But you do not know that sense gratification in poor wife or rich wife is the same. There is no difference of taste. So why are you after a woman by paying this 100,000 jewels? Sense gratification is the ultimate aim of life. Then why so much hard trouble for decorating the process of sense gratification? Why wasting so much time for decorating? So Rishabhadeva is asking that sense gratification, there is necessity because we have got senses, but not with too much trouble. Accepting too much trouble in the name of economic development, not good. Because our time is very valuable. If we want to utilize our short duration of life, which we have got at our disposal, we must utilize it for self-realization, not for unnecessarily increasing the necessities of bodily wants. This is not a good type of civilization. Simply wasting time for sense gratification. Time should be utilized for greater advantage. That's why Chanakya Pandita says, Ayushakam Kshana Ekopi na labhya swarana kotibhi. Even one moment of life spent cannot be regained for millions of gold coins. Therefore, what greater loss is there than time spent uselessly? So in this chapter, only 32nd verse purport, Prabhupada says, when a Vedic mantra is chanted within the mouth, so that only the chanter can hear, the chanting is called japa. But when such mantras are chanted loudly, it is called kirtana. So the Vedic hymn, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, can be chanted both softly to oneself or loudly. Therefore, it is called the Maha Mantra or the great hymn. Kashyapa Muni appears to be Prabhupada says in that purport, Kashyapa Muni appears to be an impersonalist. And comparing his character with that of Thakura Haridasa, it is clear that the personalist is stronger in sense control than the impersonalist. And this is explained in Bhagavad Gita as Param Drishtva Nivartate. One ceases to accept lower grade things when one is situated in a superior condition. One is supposed to be purified after taking bath and chanting Gayatri. But the Maha Mantra is so powerful that one can chant loudly or softly in any condition, and he is protected from all the evils of material existence. So Diti neglected all the principles of scriptural injunction. Therefore, although she was very anxious for auspicious children, she was informed that her children would not be worthy to be sons of a Brahmana. So there is a clear indication, no, that a Brahmana son is not always a Brahmana. Personalities like Ravana and Hiranyakashipu were actually born of Brahmanas, but they were not accepted as Brahmanas because their fathers did not follow the regulatory principles for their birth. Such children are called demons or Rakshasas. Prabhupada says there are only 1 or 2 Rakshasas in the previous ages due to negligence of the disciplinary methods. But during the age of Kali, there is no discipline in sex life. How then can one expect good children? Certainly, unwanted children cannot be a source of happiness in society. But through Krishna consciousness movement, they can be raised to the human standard by chanting the holy name of God. That is a unique contribution of Lord Chaitanya to human society. In Bhagavad Gita 1.4, it is said, when there is a deliberate negligence of regulatory principles of religious life, the women as a class become polluted, and as a result, they are unwanted children. This is especially true for boys. If the mother is not good, there cannot be good sons. This is what Prabhupada says in the purport of 1.40. The learned Kashyapa could foresee the character of the sons who would be born of the condemned womb of Diti. The womb was condemned because of the mothers being too sexually inclined during the wrong time and thus transgressing all the laws and injunctions of the scriptures. So in a society where such women are predominant, one should not expect good children. See, why marriages are not sustaining nowadays? Marriage ceremony considered to be Vivaha Yajna is meant to regulate the human mind so that it may become peaceful for spiritual advancement. In this Yajna, it is customary that we invite all the demigods to shower their blessings on the newly wedded couple. But how can the Devi Devatas come to the arena which is so contaminated? We all are aware that most of the people come directly from the beauty parlor, which is the most contaminated place, or saloons to the ceremony. What to talk to the relatives if the bridegroom follow the same? Ideally, after visiting these contaminated places, we should have a bath. But nowadays, who cares for this cleaning? All they care is for external beautification. Another thing is the use of dry clean clothes by the bridegroom and many other people during such an auspicious ceremony. See, one of the active components used in the process of dry cleaning is petrol, which is nothing but fossils, decayed dead bodies of other living entities. As far as possible, these dry cleaned items should be avoided in all auspicious ceremonies. With so much contamination and without the blessings of the demigods, how can the marriage live longer? Unless women are completely Krishna conscious. Please hear this first statement very clearly before I tell the other next statement. Unless women are completely Krishna conscious, they start thinking, I am earning. Why should I listen to my husband and so on? Being more career oriented, they neglect and end up not giving meaningful time to the family. And with the advent of the satellite television, all the minds which were polluted already becomes more glued to the idiot box. Instead of sitting with the family members, the couple starts engrossing themselves in the one-eyed equipment and waste their precious time. Both don't have ample time to understand each other. Forget question of serving or caring for each other. Ultimately, frustration creeps in and tolerance escapes from their hearts. And being selfish in nature, they always tend to think during any minor conflicts, what has he or she given me? So in one of the nectarian purports, Prabhupada strongly states that modern education has artificially devised a puffed up concept of womanly life. And therefore, marriage is practically now an imagination in human society. Very powerful, strong statement. Prabhupada highlights in the purport, by the Vedic injunction, the wife is accepted as the better half of a man's body because she's supposed to be responsible for discharging half of the duties of the husband. But in this age of Kali, marriage is based on the personal beauty. And as soon as there is a break in personal sense gratification, there is disruption or divorce. But when husband and wife aim at spiritual advancement by mutual cooperation, there is no consideration of personal beauty or the disruption of so-called love. In the material world, there is no question of love. Marriage is actually a duty performed in mutual cooperation, as directed in the authoritative scriptures for spiritual advancement. But of this Kali Yuga, it is said, Dampatye Abhiruchir. Marriage will take place simply because of mutual liking. That's all. Liking one moment means disliking the next moment. That is the fact. So marriage based on mutual liking has no value. The more the wife is tolerant, the more there is marital bliss in the family. It may take some time to adjust, but overall, patience and tolerance always is our good friend and reaps good results. Sometimes, in a moment's misunderstanding, we prepare ourselves to be separated. Prabhupada rightly states that Dampatya Kalahe Chaiva. Whenever there is fight between husband and wife, we should not take it seriously. But in the modern civilization, husband and wife quarrel is taken so seriously that immediately they go to the court and there is filing of divorce. And the combination, the married life dissolved and both are unhappy. Separation might be the easiest way to get out of the problem. But tolerating the reverse situation, even though difficult, will certainly be beneficial in the long run. It is better that before taking any drastic step, remember all those days spent together, sharing grief and joy, and better not get carried away by other views on your married life. A faithful wife is supposed to cooperate with her husband in fulfilling all the material desires so that he can then become comfortable and execute spiritual activities for the perfection of life. If, however, the husband is progressive in spiritual advancement, the wife undoubtedly shares in his activities, and thus both the wife and the husband profit in spiritual perfection. Stop here. Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Shri Prabhupada ki jai, Gurudev ki jai, Tagore Hari Bol. Very strong statement, Prabhupada, very Shastric, absolute fact. But this is the reason we are seeing the Kali Yuga, how things are happening, which is never happened in those previous. In fact, my Guru Maharaj used to say that the word divorce was never heard of in those days. This is a sad state of affairs. So we have to just taking to Krishna consciousness with all seriousness and even develop our own children in that way. Not to even a newly married couple, if they want to have children, they go by the spiritual activities. They have to read Bhagavatam and Bhagavad Gita and beget children in the spiritual in the devotional attitude. Then you will have wonderful children. Otherwise, what happened to Diti? Correct? The wrong time, without any regulations. What she had 2 demons in action. So we cannot expect. So we hope we were able to understand some, at least to take some lessons from this chapter, and not only we understand, we have to give it to others as well and propagate these things. Then the whole world will be peaceful and blissful. Thank you, Hare Krishna. If anybody has any questions, anything to share, please go ahead.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
Today's class was an eye-opener for all the young couples who are getting married recently.
Thank you.
This should be really propagated in a proper way to eliminate these divorces and all these things that are happening. And more of spirituality is to be injected in these families today.
Correct.
Don't you think so?
Yes, Prabhu, absolutely right, correct. Because now people don't, they cannot take failures. That's a problem thing. They want to be successful every time. They cannot take failure. They commit suicide, divorce. So many things are happening because they cannot tolerate. Main thing is tolerance, patience, tolerance. These are 2 wonderful words. Huh? Actually, marriage means adjust and tolerate, tolerate and adjust. Just if you remember these 2 words, adjust and tolerate and adjust, you will be successful.
But these are the 2 things
Both
that are not available. These are the 2 things that are not available with the young people today.
Absolutely correct. Instantly we react. We immediately react and get agitated.
Exactly,
that's a problem.
Exactly. Yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you, bro.
Very
Thank you,
nice
Shantu.
class.
Thank you, bro. Hare Krishna. Anybody else want to share or anything? to ask any questions? Okay, if nothing is there, we can stop here, Prabhu. Thank you, Balaji, Prabhu, Gaurang Mataji. Krishna.
Thank you, Prabhuji.
Oh, thank you so much.
Dandaparam, Gaurang Mataji. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. Thank you very much. Thank you all. Hare Krishna, Dandaparam. Mancha kalpatarubicha kripa sindhu bhaya vicha. Padidana pavani bhiveshya. Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna.